Denver Broncos quarterback Russell Wilson has an over and under at a certain amount of touchdowns here this upcoming season. According to our friends at BetOnline, why do we believe Russell Wilson will lead the NFL in touchdown passes here in 2022? You get that and much more on today's brand new episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos Country? Welcome back into Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast here on the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you so much, Broncos Country, for making Locked on Broncos your first listen of the day every single day on your favorite podcasting providers, or whether you watch us on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe or that follow button so you never miss out on a day's worth of Denver Broncos news, content, and coverage. I'm Cody Rourke, Senior Broncos Analyst at Mile High Sports, joined alongside by my co-host, Sarah Bettinger, site expert, predominantlyorange.com. On today's episode, we're going to break everything down. We talk about betting lines because BetOnline.net has listed interception totals, sack totals, and touchdown pass totals that they estimate for several Broncos players here. We're going to break it all down on today's episode of the show. Sarah, my friend, this is the big week. Broncos training camp kicks off this week. On Wednesday, fans will be in attendance on the Berman Dove Valley. I'll be there. I can't wait to provide the coverage to Broncos Country. Can't wait to see members of Broncos Country. If you see me at camp, come say hi. Would love to chat with you and your family. But, man, I tell you what, Sarah, the anticipation is at an all-time high right now. And really, it's because of one guy, and that is Russell Wilson, who's come in and has completely changed the magnascope of really how the Denver Broncos are viewed. And our good friends over there at betonline.net had just released the lines and estimations as to what they think Russell Wilson will do in terms of touchdowns and interceptions thrown this season. So according to our good friends at betonline.net, let's take a look at touchdowns here, Sarah. BetOnline has him listed at 30 and a half touchdowns this season. And now we get to answer the question in our own opinions. Is he going to hit the over? Is he going to hit the under? I'm going to start things off with you, my man. What do you think Russ is going to hit, the over or the under?
You know what, Cody? I think it would be – I just almost feel like it would be blasphemy if I took the under on this one, right? I mean, we're talking about either he's going to have 30 or he's going to have more essentially than that. So I feel like he's going to have more than 30 touchdowns. And I just think that you want to tend to maybe go with the under just because the Broncos, when's the last time they had a 30 touchdown quarter? Was it 2014 with Peyton Manning? I can't remember the last QB to throw 30 TDs.
It was Peyton Manning. I don't know if it was 20.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like it's been a lifetime ago. I was still in my 20s when it happened. Let's just say that. And I'm only going to be 33 this year. So, but I mean, at the same time, like it does feel like it was a different lifetime ago. Like I feel like I've had like one or two kids since the last time something good like that happened. And speaking of, with the anticipation of everything like you're talking about, I just informed my family, Cody, that the Broncos are going to be back as of this week. And my oldest was just like, she's like dreading it. So we got to get her on board with the anticipation here. But I'm taking the over on this one. I think Russell, he's going to average at least a couple of touchdowns a week. So if we're talking 2 touchdowns a week, that's 34 touchdowns over the course of the season. I think that's a pretty reasonable bet, right? I feel like you may not stake your mortgage on it or anything like that, but I think 2 touchdowns a week for Russell Wilson sounds pretty reasonable to me.
I mean, when you look at all the weapons that he has to throw to offensively, whether it be the running backs out of the backfield, the tight ends, the wide receivers, I mean, Russ has a multitude of different options who can catch passes, who can score for this Broncos team. And I agree with you. I'm taking the over on this one. The only way I ever see the Broncos or Russell Wilson having under 30 and a half touchdowns this season would be kind of like last year, where if he suffers an injury and has to miss several weeks like he did in 2021, that's the only way I can see that. But Sarah, I do want to go over to our next line here, and I think Broncos Country will agree. Like, let us know, do you think Russell Wilson will have the over or the under 30 and a half touchdown passes this upcoming season? Drop them in the YouTube comment section down below. Let us know your thoughts here. But let's get to the interception side of things, because this one is a little tricky to project here. Now, betonline.net has Russ listed as about 9 interceptions, the over or the under. This one, I think, is probably a little bit harder to decide on because you have to take the good with the bad. If he's having over 30 and a half touchdowns, but he's also having a little bit over 9 interceptions, like what does that look like? Are the Broncos still winning games? To me, that's a tough one. But I do want to reference Russ throughout his career, Sarah, has been a very efficient quarterback when it comes to touchdowns to interceptions. In fact, 292 total touchdown passes in his career. 87 total INTs. He's been very efficient with the football. And I want to reference 2020, where he had an MVP type season, 40 touchdowns in comparison to 13 interceptions. And then last year, a 25-6 touchdown to interception ratio in just 4 games. So even when Russell was on the field, he was cooking, he was wheeling and dealing, but he was also protecting the football. Will the Broncos get that same Russ? What are you going with the over, the under 9 interceptions this season?
Well, if you're talking about 87 career interceptions up to this point, I mean, that's roughly what, 8.7 per year based on how long he's played. He's been playing since 2012. So that's roughly his season average over the course of time. But to me, this is a tough one, like you said, because I almost want to say 9 or less. Like the double digit piece right there is something that I don't necessarily want to I don't want to put that into the atmosphere, right? I don't want to speak that into existence, like double digit interceptions. But I think we also have to realize too, Russell Wilson could be one of the best in the NFL at taking care of the ball and still throw, like you mentioned a couple years ago, 13 interceptions. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, if he's throwing a ton of passes and he's only throwing 13 interceptions on, say, 660 attempts or something like that, that's still pretty good. So, I mean, I don't know necessarily. This is where I struggle, because I wonder, are the Broncos going to be a more balanced offensive attack, or are they going to be we're going to pass the ball 40 times a game no matter what happens here? If they pass the ball 40, 45 times a game, I mean, you could definitely see Russell hitting the over on the interception total, just because of the sheer fact that he's going to be throwing the ball more. But I don't think he's going to be careless, Cody. And I don't think, I want to know what everybody in the comments thinks too, because you're not just projecting his efficiency as a quarterback, you're projecting kind of what you think the Broncos offense is going to look like, which at this point, we really have no idea. We know that it's going to be tailored to Russ, but does that mean they're going to be throwing the ball all the time? I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case, but I want to say, for me, I want to say a push, if I can, a 9 or less in this particular category.
I think that's fair. And I'll reference this too. Russ has only had 4 seasons where he's thrown double-digit interceptions. His rookie season in 2012, he had 26 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. Now you go all the way down to the 2016 season. He had 21 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. And then in 2017, 34 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. There are 34. I mean, that was a huge year for him as well back in 2017. And then we talk about the 2020 season, 13 interceptions there. But I look at his volume in terms of passing. It seems like from the time he became a Seattle Seahawk and the time he's gotten more ingrained, obviously after the Super Bowl victory against the Broncos, they allowed him to pass the football a lot more. Like they've opened it up year after year, even though they still probably haven't thrown the ball as much as they should. So what will Nathaniel Hackett do with this Broncos offense and with Russell Wilson? Broncos country, let us know your thoughts on the touchdown over and under 30.5 and the interception over and under at 9 down in the YouTube comment section down below. But coming up here in just a moment, Sarah and I, we're going to dive deep into some more betting lines as it pertains to edge rusher sacks this season. We take a look at Bradley Chubb. We take a look at Randy Gregory and where they sit coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about BetOnline.net, the sponsors of today's episode, Locked On Broncos. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs and where you can find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every single league, whether it be Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf, all in one place. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting and podcasts and scores. They have you covered. So head to the website today, betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. The Broncos here in the 2022 NFL season will be looking to get after the quarterback even more off the edge than they have in the last several years. And it'll all boil down to 2 players who are expected to be the key starters with Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory. Broncos country, thank you so much for tuning in and making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. We appreciate you so much. Sarah, continue on with our theme as we got going on today's episode of Locked On Broncos on everybody's favorite podcast provider or on YouTube. We're going to take a look at edge rusher sacks here. Now, for BetOnline, let's start off with the Broncos' key offseason acquisition in free agency, and that is Randy Gregory, coming over from the Dallas Cowboys in a year where only played 12 games last season, but had 6 sacks for that Cowboys defense. We've talked about the multitude of pressure that he created, 29 total pressures in 2021, not to mention 11 quarterback knockdowns. We see the potential there for Randy Gregory. BetOnline.net has his sack total listed at an over and under of 6. And Sarah, like I said, 12 games last season, 6 sacks in 12 games. 29 pressures, a multitude of quarterback knockdowns. Like for me, even if he doesn't play full 17, I have a hard time thinking that Randy Gregory can't get over 6. I'm going to take the over here. What say you?
I think definitely as if we project him to play even at least like 13 or 14 games this year, and even if that requires him to get his feet wet at the beginning of the season, right? That's the big concern right now with Randy Gregory from the fan base. It's like I was just reading a tweet from somebody who's like, who's even still optimistic about Randy Gregory's status for this season? And to me, that's me. I don't know if that's me being overly optimistic. I don't think so. I mean, I think like we've heard, and Mike Kliss of 9 News reported, like his shoulder is fully healed. It's now just a matter of getting it strengthened and not being stupid or unwise with the way that you approach the preseason. Like the preseason doesn't matter. And yeah, do you want to see him get reps at training camp? Of course. Is he going to be out there doing absolutely nothing? Of course not. He's going to be out there doing stuff. He may not be going against Garrett Bowles and sticking his shoulder into Garrett, and trying to, push Garrett Bowles backwards during practice, but he's certainly going to be out there strengthening his shoulder and getting things back to full strength, really. So I definitely see, if we're talking about him playing at least 13 or 14 games, and I have a feeling we're going to see him play maybe even a full season, I definitely think over 6 sacks. Like he hasn't had the opportunity to really do that before. Has he ever even played back-to-back seasons in his NFL career? I have no idea. I mean, Randy Gregory has been so on and off the field for so many different reasons that I'd love to see what this guy can do with some continuity. And the shoulder injury, that stuff, it sucks. But at the same time, can we project him to beat his career best of 6 sacks? I think absolutely that's a safe bet.
Well, and going back to what you mentioned about strengthening the shoulder, and Broncos country, a lot of fans are thinking, like, why is that if he's 100% healed, why isn't he on the football field? Like, the strengthening process is super crucial if you've ever had a shoulder operation. Those of you who've had it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But for a guy like Randy Gregory, his position requires him to have great core strength, great leg strength, and great upper body strength, which involves the use of the shoulders because, as you mentioned, he's a power rusher. He's a guy that's going to take his either hand, his left or his right, regardless of what shoulder he's had, he's going to use that to punch and grip and extend and hold out and squeeze down. When your shoulder, after you've had an operation the way that he did, if you go out there and, as you mentioned, if you be dumb with it, if you go out there and you do things and you stretch it all in certain ways it's not supposed to without it being fully strengthened, you can re-tear it easily and you can cause more damage. And I think that's exactly where George Paton has really been cautious with him so far this season, is not rushing him back, which there is no need to. The expectation is still that he will be ready week 1 when the Broncos are on the road against the Seattle Seahawks on Monday Night Football, game that I'll be at watching up close and personal and covering. I expect to see a fully healthy Randy Gregory. And like I said, I think the over is easily attainable here. But now let's get to the flip side here. His counterpart opposite of him, Sarah. And I think this is where a lot of people in Broncos country have some concern here. Now, first off, when we talk about Bradley Chubb, here's what I want to say. I think when you look at Bradley Chubb's 4 years in the NFL, okay, first season, rookie season, unbelievable. Almost breaks the rookie sack record. 12 sacks there, was a dominant force. Then the next season, plays through 4 games, tears his ACL, misses the rest of the season. Okay, so there's a 1-on-1 year. Healthy year, unhealthy year where he's out. The next year, he comes back from the ACL, gets off to a little bit of a slow start, but finishes on a high note to become a Pro Bowler in his 3rd season, Sarah, with the impact that we saw him create in 2020. Then 2021, last year, suffers that ankle injury at the end of the 2020 season, re-aggravates it in training camp, has to get a procedure, isn't ready, tries to come back week 2, re-aggravates it, a situation where he tried to come back and play. In my opinion, that doesn't make Bradley Chubb a bust. I think that the years that we've seen Bradley Chubb on the field, healthy, he's been pretty damn good. I don't think anyone can dispute that, but everyone's so caught up in these easy, low-hanging fruit narratives that I think it's blinding their perspective. Chubb is entering this season fully healthy, and this might be the healthiest he's ever been in his career entering a season. This is where he comes in on the betting lines, according to our friends at betonline.net. His over and under on sacks is set at 7.5. I'm going to set it on the assumption he plays all 17 games because this is a make or break year for Chubb. We all get that. I'm slamming the over here. I think he's going to get well over 7.5. I think he's going to have double-digit sacks here in 2022. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me?
I have to smash the over on this as well. And at the risk of seeming overly optimistic on all these different categories, I just feel like things are shaping up for the Broncos to kind of, not for lack of a better term, really padding the stats out there. I think that a lot of these guys are going to show up and show out. Like you talked about, that 2020 season for Bradley Chubb, when he made the Pro Bowl, I think a lot of people try to act like that season never happened because they want to lump all these last 3 seasons together and act like Bradley Chubb hasn't played at all, when that hasn't been the case, right? And he came inches away from a pick six last year. We saw him in 2019, even when he was playing injured against the Jacksonville Jaguars, dominating out there as a pass rusher. So, and I think in that 2020 season, you assume he's playing through some pain, he's playing through some discomfort, he's playing through some hesitancy, and still going out there and just remember the Jets game. I mean, he was outstanding against the New York Jets. And I know they were rotating guys in and out at the left tackle position like crazy, but he still played really well. So to me, Bradley Chubb, I feel like you can safely slam the over on his sack projections this year. And the reason for that is this guy's got so much to prove, not just to Broncos country, not just to media, but I think for himself. Like, he wants to go out there, and I think he wants to prove to himself and to everybody else that he is that prospect that so many people talked about. Like, when Bradley Chubb was coming out of college, there was no reason not to lump him in with other recent edge prospects like Jadeveon Clowney and Khalil Mack. Like, he was the next guy in the succession. Like, he was the next top flight edge prospect. And the Denver Broncos, they were not expected to get him at pick number 5. I mean, he was that good coming out of NC State. And I think people forget that as well, that this guy's only 25, 26 years old this season. So let's go into this season with high expectations for Bradley Chubb. I feel like he's going to absolutely smash that 7.5 number, and maybe even, I mean, dare I say, Cody, double that number. I think he's going to be very close to doing exactly that this season.
Well, for the Broncos, it would be a really good thing because they do not have a first-round pick or a second-round pick in 2023's NFL draft. So, in a world where you're going to need an edge rusher potentially, you hope he balls out so you can pay him, and then he can be your guy with Randy Gregory and some of the other guys behind him. Broncos country, do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you think the over and under will be on Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory sack totals? Let us know in the comment section down below here on YouTube. Coming up here in just a moment, we're going to take a look at the Broncos secondary in terms of interceptions. What is the over and under for Patrick Surtain or Justin Simmons, and will they match that? We tell you why we think they'll hit the over on each of them coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about our good friends over there at Dave. Level with me. We've all been in a situation at some point in our lives where we were a little tight on cash. Maybe you could only afford to put a few gallons of gas in your tank, or you got another save the day and are wondering how you're going to afford a gift. That's where Dave can help. Dave is the banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. And that's more money to fill your tank, buy a wedding gift, or to pay any extra bills that you may have. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There's no interest and there is no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief that they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and you need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE, and you can sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve, member FDIC. Your future you will thank you. As the Denver Broncos head into training camp this week, they'll be doing so with 2 ball hawks on the back end of their secondary who led the team in overall takeaways last season. They need to do more of that here in 2022. We take a look at the secondary over and under on interceptions for Patrick Surtain and Justin Simmons. Once again, Broncos country, thank you so much for making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. We appreciate you so much for tuning in. We have you covered all week long for Broncos training camp through the preseason and all throughout the regular season. So if you're a brand new viewer, hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on a day's worth of Denver Broncos news, content, and coverage. Sarah, really diving into this here, BetOnline.net has Justin Simmons, who's been the leading ball hawk guy for this Broncos defense the last 2 seasons. Back-to-back 5 interception seasons, 2021 and 2020. So 10 INTs total in the last 2 years. They have his over and under on INT set at 3 here. Interesting enough. Like, I feel like based on trends, I personally am going to smash the over. I think he gets over 3 interceptions this season.
I think you got to, right? You got to expect it out of Justin Simmons. I feel like the guy basically accidentally picks off 3 interceptions, 3 passes a year at this point. Like he's just always in the right place at the right time. And not only that, he's a great playmaker on the ball. So to me, I can't say, I definitely can't say under 3. I think like 3 interceptions is really good. Like you said, it's way different than it's way different than getting a sack, because
Yes.
yes, a pass rusher can go out there and basically just throw an offensive lineman out of his way and hit the quarterback and take the ball away at the same. Wait, that reminds me, Super Bowl 50. That's exactly what happened in there. The best sack ever. But I feel like for Justin Simmons, man, he has the opportunity to really go out there this year and establish himself. Like, there's plenty of conversations happening about who's the best safety in the NFL. And remember, ESPN, it's not just Broncos people that think Justin Simmons is the best safety. ESPN, the executives that were polled, they rated him as the best safety in the league as well. I think this year he's going to go out there. He's going to maybe have his highest interception total ever. Like, let's see that. Let's talk like that about Justin Simmons. Let's not talk about the bare minimum. I think 3 is the bare minimum for him. Like, he's definitely going to have 3. It's how many on top of that is he going to have? So I like setting the over under there, but I feel very comfortable with Justin Simmons smashing the over on that one.
Well, Broncos Country, let us know down below your thoughts. Will Justin Simmons hit the over or the under on 3 interceptions here in 2022, courtesy of our good friends over there, betonline.net? That leads us to our next guy here, and a guy who ascended so much as a rookie with such high expectations. I think he met them, and then he exceeded them last season. Patrick Surtain had 4 interceptions as a rookie last year, 14 passes defense. And I also want to reference back to Simmons. He had 12 passes defensed last year as well, in combination with his 5 interceptions. For Surtain, though, a lot of people are starting to take hold of the name of who he is and where he lines up on the football field. I mean, you look at the Los Angeles Chargers, Justin Herbert, every time he gets on the field, as great of a quarterback as he is going to be like, hey, where's number 2 at? Because that guy, he's always a thorn in my side, and I don't know how to overcome this guy. And I'm sure they're going to try to test and try to figure that out this year. But we even projected on one of the episodes here on Locked On Broncos earlier this offseason, I don't think that PS2 will get as many targets this upcoming season as he did as a rookie. He had 97 targets, I guess, in his rookie season. I just don't see him coming close to that this upcoming season. That's why we projected that Ronald Darby would probably lead the team in passes defensed in 2022. His over-under is also set at 3. Now, Sarah, this is one I'm actually kind of confident and saying I'm going to take the under on here, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not, I was going to say I'll play devil's advocate and take the under here just for that exact reason.
Let's do it.
So I think definitely you could, I'm not a betting person, but I think definitely, Cody, if you're a betting person, you could take the under here and maybe make a little money for yourself, just because I think you're right. Teams are going to try to avoid throwing the ball Pat Surtain's direction. And if they throw it his direction, they're going to find out very quickly why you just don't do that. I mean, he's already one of the smartest and one of the best playmaking defensive backs in the NFL. So I just think that I do think teams are going to avoid throwing at him. But you would have thought back in, by 2006, you would have thought that teams would have thought better of throwing Champ Bailey's direction as well. And then the guy goes out and picks off 10 passes in one season. So I don't know. I mean, I really want the over here. I really want to see that, because I want to see teams try to test him, and I want to see him continually taking the ball away. I mean, last year, the reason why teams threw the ball at Trayvon Diggs in Dallas so much is because the guy gave up almost as much as he took away, right? So that's the difference with Pat Surtain. Like, the guy doesn't give anything up, and he's also taking stuff away. So teams just they have to scheme away from him. You just can't help but wonder, though, if it takes him a while to wise up to it, like, could he go out there and, just like Trayvon Diggs last year, could he go on like a 4 or 5 game streak of picking off at least one pass? Because I think definitely he has the ability to do that. It's just a matter of whether or not teams will throw it at him. So, like, my heart says over, but my head is saying under on this particular category.
And this is the one time, and as we said, this is the one time in any situation of betting where I think it's a good thing to take the under here because of some of these circumstances. And we'll see if NFL teams are wise enough to take our betting advice here and to not test Patrick Surtain in 2022. Broncos Country, let us know down below. Do you think PS2 will have the over or the under on 3 interceptions this upcoming season. Let us know down below. But Broncos Country, that'll wrap up today's episode, Lockdown Broncos, and your favorite podcasting provider. Tomorrow's episode of the show, it features us talking about why we believe the Denver Broncos will be playoff contenders in 2022. And also we share Broncos Country's thoughts as to why or why not they may or may not make the playoffs as well. You get that on tomorrow's brand new episode of the show. We'll see you then.